The rot always announces itself with confidence. My father leaned back in his chair, knuckles white around a tumbler he didn't need, voice sharpened for sport. The room went quiet the way it does when a blade clears its sheath. I remember the dust in the air, the portrait of my grandfather watching us like he'd already decided who deserved the name. My sister stared at her hands. My mother smiled too hard. "You can't even afford a car," Dad said, enjoying it, "so shut your damn mouth." I nodded, calm, submissive. I had learned that posture young. The thudding began a second later, distant, then present, like a heart finding a new rhythm. The windows rattled, the lawn bent. Wind tore through the hedges my mother had trimmed to look important. A helicopter landed where my father's pride used to live. I smiled. "My ride's here." Dad froze. My mother fainted. That part wasn't planned, but nothing ever is. There was a time I believed loyalty was inherited, that blood carried a code. My father used to tell me our family was a fortress, strong walls, private rooms, no outsiders. He taught me numbers early, how to read a balance sheet, how to hide a weakness with a joke, how to reward silence. I loved him for it, loved the certainty, loved the way his hand on my shoulder meant approval without words. Then I grew up, and he grew afraid. The family business was his crown. He wore it like a birthright. I was the spare, smart enough to use, invisible enough to discard. At meetings, my ideas were immature. In public, my presence was confusing. In private, he called it tough love. He called me ungrateful. I called it rehearsal. I discovered the betrayal the way these things always surface, a single line item that didn't belong, a trust restructured without notice, my name missing where it had always been, not erased, relocated, shelved. The paper trail tried to lie. Numbers don't lie, people do. Dad had shifted voting rights from the family trust into a shell controlled by his attorney. My inheritance turned into an allowance, temporary, revocable. He planned to sell pieces, dilute me quietly, keep the throne warm. I remember the moment my chest stopped hurting. Pain had finished its job. Planning took over. I didn't confront him. That's what he expected. I thanked him for the guidance. I stayed quiet at meetings. I sold my car. I moved into a smaller place. I let the rumors harden, let him feel taller. At night, I built a map. Surveillance is a harsh word. I prefer confirmation. I confirmed emails, confirmed signatures, confirmed the reach of an old clause my grandfather had insisted on after the war, a failsafe buried deep in the retirement trust. In the event of coercion, dilution, or bad faith restructuring, voting rights would revert to the primary beneficiary, me. All it needed was proof and patience. I hired people my father wouldn't recognize as threats, auditors with soft voices, attorneys who hated bullies, a pilot who kept his mouth shut. I waited. The execution had to be clean, no shouting, no blood on the carpet. I triggered the clause on a Friday afternoon when the markets were bored and the lawyers were tired, filed the evidence, certified, logged. I watched the confirmation arrive like a sunrise, slow, inevitable, warm. By Monday morning, the board convened an emergency meeting. Panic sounds the same everywhere. Phones buzzing, chairs scraping, assistants whispering like they're praying. My father stormed in, furious and confident, still wearing the crown. "Who authorized this?" he demanded. "Who fired me?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Understood," I said, echoing the word I'd practiced for years. That was the moment the trust activated its voting rights. Silence does something beautiful when it lands in the right room. Someone coughed. Someone else read the numbers again. The chairwoman finally looked at me, eyes narrowing with respect. "Who just fired the person who owns 76% of the shares?" she asked. I met my father's eyes. He didn't recognize me anymore. That was the point. The family meeting that weekend was theater. My father tried to regain footing with old weapons, money, shame, volume. He brought out my mother like a shield. My sister cried. He sneered. The fortress cracked. "You can't even afford a car," he said. desperate now, so shut your damn mouth. That's when the helicopter landed. I stood. The wind pressed my suit against my bones. The pilot stepped out, nodded once, professional, invisible. "My ride's here," I said, calm, polite. My father froze. My mother fainted. My sister finally looked up at me like she'd been underwater and found air. I didn't gloat. Gloating is noisy. I walked past him and felt the weight of his stare collapse into something smaller. After, there were calls, apologies wrapped in excuses, lawyers who suddenly knew my name. My father sent one message, a paragraph about betrayal and blood and mistakes. I didn't reply.